I sold my life to save my father, marrying a rich man confined to a wheelchair. On our wedding night, I discovered the tragic groom was a cold-blooded monster, and my gilded cage was actually a lethal torture chamber. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. The foreclosure notice was a stark white rectangle against the peeling yellow paint of our kitchen wall. It was the final tombstone for a life that had been dying for 3 years. On the table, a mountain of my father's medical bills formed a messy paper avalanche, threatening to swallow the last of our tiny apartment. My mother, Diana, sat at that table, her head buried in her hands. The sound of her quiet, defeated sobs had become the soundtrack to my life. "Amara," my mother whispered, her voice rough, forcing her head up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but they flashed with the sharp, cruel righteousness of the desperate. "Mrs. Thorne, she'll wipe the debt clean. Every penny. She'll get your daddy the new physical therapist, the one from the university. She'll save this family." I stood at the sink, my hands plunged into greasy water, my knuckles raw. At 25, I should have been in a studio covered in charcoal dust. Finishing my final year, I had won the scholarship. I'd been the one who was supposed to get out. Instead, I was scrubbing pans at a diner and selling my sketches for grocery money. "All you have to do is say yes," my mother said, as if it were a simple choice, as if she weren't asking me to set myself on fire to keep her warm. "So I'm a payment?" I said, my voice flat. "I'm the price." "Amara, don't you dare!" she snapped. "This is a blessing. A rich man, a powerful family. Do you know what kind of life this is? You'll have everything." "I wanted to paint," I whispered, the words feeling childish and stupid on my tongue. "Painting?" she scoffed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Painting doesn't pay for spinal surgery. Amara, painting doesn't keep a roof over our heads. This is your family. This is your duty. He's a good man from a good family. He's just in a chair, that's all." A good rich man in a chair. A man I had never met. A man, Elias Thorne, who had seen my photo. A grainy snapshot Diana had sent to the Thorne matriarch, and deemed me suitable. A man willing to buy my father's health in exchange for my life. The terms were unspoken but clear. I was to be a wife, a nursemaid, a breeder. A pained groan from the next room pulled my eyes away from the cracked window. My father, a proud man, and the debt was killing him faster than the accident had. I turned off the water. The silence in the small, damp apartment was absolute. I was trapped. My father was trapped. My mother was trapped. And this rich, cold woman, Genevieve Thorne, was offering a key. The price of that key was me. "Fine," I said. The word was small and dead, but it landed with the force of a gavel. The auction was over. "Fine. Call her. Tell Mrs. Thorne her debt is settled." My mother let out a sob, this one of relief. She lunged forward, grabbing my wet hands. "Thank you, baby. Thank you. You're a good daughter. You're saving us." I pulled my hands away, wiping the dishwater on my jeans. "No, Mama," I said, turning back to the window. "I'm not. I'm just sold." 2 days later, a black car, long and silent as a shark, slid to the curb outside my building. I walked out with a single battered suitcase. My mother was crying, dabbing her eyes. My father, from his wheelchair by the door, just looked at his hands, his face a mask of shame. He pressed a crumpled $50 bill into my palm. "For emergencies, Amara," he mumbled. I got in the car. The leather was cold. I didn't look back. The Thorne estate was not a home. It was a punishment. It rose out of the manicured green hills like a cluster of gray Gothic teeth. It was all sharp angles, cold stone, and dark, empty windows. As the car crunched up the long gravel drive, I felt a physical, oppressive weight settle on me. This was my cage. The massive front door opened, and a woman stood there. She was tall, rail-thin, and wore a gray dress that seemed cut from the same stone as the house. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun. This was Genevieve Thorne, the matriarch. Her eyes, the color of a winter sky, performed a swift, brutal inventory, taking in my cheap coat, my nervous hands, and the single pathetic suitcase. "Amara Hale," she stated. It was not a question. "Mrs. Thorne, come in." She turned, and I followed a servant in her wake. The foyer was a cavern of black and white marble. My footsteps echoed, loud and intrusive. The only other sound was the sharp, decisive click of her heels. "You have been quiet about this arrangement," Genevieve said, not looking at me. "I appreciate that. Discretion is the highest virtue in this family." We stopped at the base of a massive curving staircase. She turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "I want to be clear about your role here, Amara. My son Elias is delicate. He has been through a terrible ordeal. His accident, it broke more than his body. It broke his spirit." Her voice softened, a practiced, brittle performance of maternal grief. "He is sensitive. He requires gentle, patient care. He is not a strong man. He is prone to episodes. His temperament is fragile." She was warning me. She was telling me he was weak, perhaps mentally unstable. I was being primed not to be a wife, but to be a nurse. "You, on the other hand," she continued, her eyes hardening, "are durable. You come from durable stock. You will be his wife. Yes, you will be his companion. But more than that, you will be his anchor. You will not upset him. You will not challenge him. You will be a calming, silent presence. In return for this, and for the duties that will come later, your family is secure. Do you understand?" "I understand," I whispered. My voice sounded small in the vast, cold hall. "Good." A thin reptilian smile touched her lips. "Then let us introduce you to your husband." Genevieve led me not to a grand living room, but down a dark, wood-paneled hall to a room that smelled of old paper, lemon oil, and a faint antiseptic tang. The library. He was there, in the center of the room, near a large rain-streaked window. My first thought was that he was a boy. He was 32, I knew, but he seemed younger, smaller. He was slumped in a state-of-the-art wheelchair that looked more like a futuristic throne. He was pale, but he was, I saw with a small, sick lurch, beautiful. He had a sharp, fine-boned face, dark, unkempt curls, and long, elegant hands that rested limp and useless on the arms of the chair. He was staring out at the gray, misty garden, his profile to us. He seemed utterly, tragically broken. "Elias," Genevieve said, her voice soft, but with the same still edge. He flinched as if the sound had struck him. He turned his head, his movements slow, pained. His eyes, dark and wide, found me. I was prepared for a monster. I was prepared for a bitter, angry, cruel man who would take his rage at the world out on me. I was prepared for a fight. I was not prepared for this. He looked at me with a kind of fearful curiosity, like a deer caught in the headlights. "Elias, this is Amara," Genevieve said, as if to a child. "Amara Hale, your bride. She's come to live with us." Elias just stared at me. I could see his throat move as he swallowed. It's nice to meet you, Amara," he whispered. His voice was soft. It was weak. It was trembling. My heart, which I thought had turned to stone, did a painful, stupid lurch. This wasn't a monster. This was a victim. He was as much a prisoner of this house as I was. "Hello, Elias," I said, my voice coming out softer than I intended. "My mother, she can be a lot," he whispered, his eyes flicking to Genevieve, then quickly away. He was afraid of her. I, I'm just, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad to finally have a friend. He gave me a small, shy, broken smile. All the fight, all the cold rage I had been nursing, just evaporated. It was replaced by a deep, profound, and suffocating pity. This was my jailer, and he was a sad, lonely boy, trapped in a chair, terrorized by his own mother. Genevieve put a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that was meant to look loving, but seemed purely possessive. See, I told you she was lovely. You two will be very happy. She turned to me. He is, as you can see, very fragile. He requires patience, kindness. He has been through an unspeakable trauma. I just nodded, my throat tight. I looked at the man I was about to marry, this tragic groom. I realized I was not in a prison. I was in a hospital, a quiet, lonely, gothic hospital. And my life sentence was not to be a wife. It was to be a nursemaid. This wasn't a horror story. It was just a tragedy. The wedding was a crime scene, a cold, sterile, joyless affair that took place an hour later right there in the library. There were no flowers. There were no guests. There was only me in my one good black dress. Elias was in his wheelchair, wearing a dark suit that seemed too large for his frail frame. Genevieve was a silent stone-faced sentinel. Two men in identical dark suits, the Thorne family lawyers, were there to act as witnesses. A severe-looking judge, clearly an old family friend, was brought in to make it legal. My parents were escorted in. My mother was wearing her Sunday best and looked small and terrified. My father, in his own wheelchair, was staring at the floor, his jaw tight, with a shame that was so palpable I could taste it. They were a living, breathing testament to the transaction. "Shall we begin?" the judge asked, his voice bored. I was positioned next to Elias. He smelled of soap and that faint antiseptic smell. He kept his head bowed. The judge read the words from a piece of paper, his voice droning, devoid of all meaning or emotion. "Do you, Amara Hale, take this man, Elias Thorne, to be your lawfully wedded husband?" I looked at my mother. Her eyes were pleading with me. "Please, baby, just say it. Save us." I looked at Genevieve. Her face was a mask of cold impatience. I looked at Elias. He turned his head and looked up at me. His dark eyes were wide, and I could have sworn I saw a tear shimmering in his lashes. He looked so vulnerable, so terrified, so broken. My pity for him in that moment was absolute. We were two animals caught in the same brutal trap. "I do," I whispered. My voice was a dead thing. The judge turned to Elias. "And do you, Elias Thorne?" Elias made a small choking sound. He struggled to speak. His voice came out as a reedy, trembling whisper. I. It was the most pathetic, heartbreaking sound I had ever heard. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you man and wife," the judge said, already closing his book. There was no kiss. There was no applause. One of the lawyers snapped his briefcase shut. My mother let out a small, shuddering sob of pure, unadulterated relief. The transaction was complete. The judge and the lawyers were gone in minutes. My parents were escorted out by a silent housekeeper. My mother blew me a tearful, guilty kiss. I was left alone with my new mother-in-law and my new husband. "Well," Genevieve said, a thin, satisfied smile on her face. "That's done, Elias. You look pale. You need your rest." My new life began immediately. The sun was setting, casting long, dark shadows across the marble foyer. The house was descending into its natural, tomb-like state. "I will show you to the master suite," Genevieve said. I followed her up the massive, curving staircase, my small suitcase in hand. The carpet was so thick my footsteps made no sound. I felt like I was floating. The master suite was at the end of a long, dark hall. It was vast, colder, if possible, than the rest of the house. The centerpiece was a massive, dark wood four-poster bed that looked like something out of a horror movie. The walls were a deep, suffocating blue. The heavy velvet curtains were drawn. The only light came from a few dim, ornate lamps, and it was, I saw with a lurch, heavily modified. There was medical equipment, an IV stand next to the bed, a heart monitor, its screen dark, and a tray of medical supplies. This was not a bedroom. This was a ward. A man was there waiting. He was older, with a severe face and cold, intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a suit, not a doctor's coat, but he held a small black medical bag. "This is Dr. Hollis," Genevieve said. "He oversees Elias's care." A moment later, a nurse wheeled Elias in. He looked exhausted, his head slumped to one side, his face pale and clammy. "A long day for him," Genevieve said, all performance again. "Dr. Hollis, it's time for his evening medication." "Of course," the doctor said, his voice clipped. He prepared a syringe. "What? What is that?" I asked, my voice small. Genevieve gave me a look of cold pity. "Pain medication, child. His nerves are shattered. The accident left him in constant, chronic pain. He cannot rest without it. It's a necessity." Dr. Hollis efficiently, impersonally administered the injection into an IV port in Elias's arm. I watched, horrified, as my new husband simply went out. His head lolled. His breathing, which had been shallow, became deep and rhythmic. He was asleep instantly. "He will sleep through the night," Dr. Hollis said, packing his bag. "He is delicate." "Thank you, doctor," Genevieve said. She turned to me. "Be patient with him, Amara. As I said, he's been through so much. He needs management." She and the doctor walked to the door. I stood there, frozen in the middle of this vast, dark, terrifying room, alone with my new comatose husband. "The nurse will be in the adjoining room, should you require anything," Genevieve said. "But do not call unless it is an emergency. He needs undisturbed rest." They left. I stood in the silence of the master suite, my small, pathetic suitcase at my feet. The only sound in the cavernous room was the slow, steady, drugged breathing of the man on the bed, my husband. I backed away from the bed, a cold, sick dread coiling in my stomach. This was it. This was my life. I was a 25-year-old widow married to a living corpse. I was a high-priced nursemaid, locked in a tomb with her patient. I walked to the heavy velvet curtains and pulled one back. The window looked out over a black, dead garden. The glass was cold. The rain lashed against it. I was so bone-weary. I had fought for so long, and this cold, silent, empty room was my reward. I turned back, my eyes scanning my new prison. I saw an armchair, a silk, high-back thing, sitting in the shadows as far from the bed as possible. I decided I would sleep there. I would spend my nights there. I walked to the door, to see if it was real, maybe. I put my hand on the heavy, cold brass handle. I turned it. It didn't budge. I tried again with more force. It was locked. A sharp, cold blade of pure, unadulterated panic shot through me. I was locked in. Click. Thack. I had heard it. When Genevieve and the doctor left, I had heard the sound of a heavy, old-fashioned skeleton key turning in the lock. "No," I whispered, rattling the handle. "No, no, no." This wasn't care. This wasn't protection. This was a cage. I backed away from the door, my heart hammering in my chest. I looked at the man on the bed. His breathing was so deep. He was completely gone. I was alone. I was locked in. I ran to the other door. The one Genevieve had said led to the nurse's room. I tried the handle. Locked. I was trapped. I collapsed into the armchair. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to stop the shaking. They're just protecting him, I tried to tell myself. He's delicate. They don't want me to… What? Hurt him? No. They didn't want me to leave. I was the property. I was the womb. I was the prize they had bought. And they were locking me in with the other thing they owned. I sat there in the dark, my terror a living thing. An hour passed. The only sounds were the wind, the rain, and the slow, drug breathing of the man on the bed. I must have dozed, my mind finally shutting down from the sheer, crushing weight of it all. I woke to a sound. The breathing. It had stopped. I shot bolt upright in the chair, my heart stopping. The room was dead silent. "Elias," I whispered, and then a new sound. A voice. It was not a weak voice. It was not soft. It was strong, clear, and dripping with a cold, mocking amusement that sliced through the darkness. "You can stop acting now," the voice said. "The terrified virgin routine is boring." My blood turned to ice. I couldn't move. I couldn't even scream. My throat closed. I spun, my eyes straining in the dim lamplight. Elias Thorne was sitting bolt upright in the bed. The man who had been comatose, the man who had been drugged into oblivion. He was sitting up. The silk sheets were pulled around his waist, his arms crossed over his chest. The dull, shy, broken man was gone. His eyes were wide open and fixed on me. They were not soft. They were not shy. They were sharp, intelligent, and glittering with a terrifying, sadistic light. "What?" I stammered. The word was a dry croak. The medicine, Dr. Hollis?" Elias laughed. It was not the weak, trembling sound I'd heard in the library. It was a harsh, sharp, ugly sound. It was the sound of a predator. "Saline," he scoffed. "A little vitamin B12 for color. Dr. Hollis knows who signs his checks. My mother, bless her cold, stupid heart, thinks she's in charge of my care. She's not. I am." I pushed myself so far back into the armchair, I felt the wood frame dig into my spine. You're not… What? A vegetable? A broken little bird?" He sneered. "A tragic romantic hero for you to pity and save." He shook his head, the dark curls falling over his forehead. That is the performance. And you, my dear, bought a front row ticket." I was in a nightmare. The pity I had felt, the kinship, it was all a lie. It was a trap. The sad, lonely boy was the lure. The shy, trembling vows were the bait. And I, in my arrogant, naive pity, had walked right into the shark's mouth. You're a monster," I whispered, the realization hitting me with the force of a physical blow. "I'm disappointed," he hissed, his voice dropping. "My mother vetted you. She said you were perfect, poor, desperate, and simple. I was hoping for a bit more of a spark. But all you've done is sit in that chair and tremble. It's boring." You're not paralyzed," I managed to say. "Oh, no." He grabbed his own legs, his hands, which I'd seen as elegant and frail, digging into his thighs like talons. This part is 100% real. The accident was a spectacular failure. I'm truly beautifully trapped from the waist down, a king on a throne of broken nerves." But he leaned forward and his eyes glittered. "Being trapped in this chair, being forced to sit, has made my other appetites so much sharper, so much more creative." He wheeled himself with two powerful, menacing strokes from the side of the bed. The chair, which I had thought was a symbol of his weakness, was a weapon. It moved silently over the carpet, bringing him closer, closer. "And you," he whispered, stopping just inches from my feet. "You, Amara, are my new permanent appetite." The wedding night had just begun. I was frozen in the armchair, my mind a blank, screaming void. The man in the wheelchair was watching me, his head tilted, a look of profound, almost academic disappointment on his face. "Really nothing," he said, his strong, clear voice filling the silence. "This is the part where you're supposed to be hysterical. My mother paid a lot of money for you. The least you could do is be entertaining." The debt is paid," I said, my only shield. He finished. "You're bought and paid for. You are officially Thorne property. There is nowhere to run. No one is coming for you. My mother has, in her infinite cold-blooded wisdom, locked you in here with me." He smiled, a slow, terrible smile that did not reach his eyes. "And I've been so bored." My terror was so profound it was almost paralyzing. I was trying to find an angle, a way out, a piece of leverage. The accident," I stammered. "Your mother, she—" "Ah, the accident," he mused, his face darkening. "The tragic car crash, the drunk driver who was never found. Yes, a beautiful story. All lies." He wheeled his chair back, turning to face the unlit fireplace. His profile was a hard, cruel line in the dim light. "The public story is a lie. The real story is so much better." He looked over his shoulder at me. "Have you met my older brother, Damien?" I just nodded, my throat tight. "Damien," Elias sneered. "He's perfect. He's healthy. He's charismatic. He's the one who should have inherited. But my father? My father was an old-fashioned bastard. He didn't like Damien. He thought he was weak. He loved me, his brilliant, ruthless younger son. And he left me the controlling interest in the entire Thorne Empire." He began to wheel himself around the room, a restless, caged energy in his powerful arms. "Damien, of course, couldn't have that. He's been running the company as acting CEO, but he's just a placeholder. He couldn't touch the real assets. Not while I was alive and well." "So," I whispered, the horrifying truth dawning. "The accident wasn't an accident." "It was a failure," he finished. "My failure, not his." I didn't understand. "What?" He laughed, that sharp, ugly sound again. "Oh, you thought he tried to kill me? No, no, no. That's the story my mother tells herself. That's the lie that lets her sleep. The truth? I was trying to kill him." My blood turned to ice. "He was in my way," Elias said, shrugging. "A corporate restructuring. I sabotaged the brakes on his car. A clean, simple, effective plan. But in my eagerness, I made a mistake. A fatal one. I got the dates wrong. I thought he was driving to the mountain retreat that weekend. I was. I took my own car, the one I'd so carefully prepped for him, and I went off the coastal highway." He stopped in front of me, his face a mask of dark, ironic amusement. "Ironic, isn't it? I woke up a king and a paralyzed from the T4 vertebrae down." He slapped his useless dead legs, the sound a dull flack in the silent room. "A beautiful, perfect, poetic trap. I am, as you see, truly beautifully paralyzed. I was married to a sociopath, a failed, crippled murderer. But it's been educational," he continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "When you can't move, you learn to make other people move for you. You learn to pull strings. You learn to observe. And I find I like it. I like it very, very much." I stared at him, my mind scrambling for purchase. Your mother," I whispered. Does she know that you tried to kill her firstborn, perfect son?" Elias laughed. "Of course she knows. She's the one who covered it up." This was a new, fresh hell. This was a madness I couldn't comprehend. "The police? The evidence?" "She lost it," he finished. "She paid the investigators. She built the drunk driver narrative herself. She loves me, Amara. She loves her real boy. Her broken, monstrous, special boy. She always hated Damien." He's too normal, too much like my father. He wheeled himself to the window, his back to me. Genevieve and we have an arrangement, a compact, you might say. She protects me from the world. She keeps Damien at bay, brands him disloyal for even looking at me the wrong way. She manages my care, and in return, I need her. I'm her entire life's purpose now, her tragic, secret little king. It's a perfect symbiosis. And the staff? I asked, my voice shaking. Dr. Hollis, the nurse? Owned, he said with a wave of his hand. Dr. Hollis is the one who faked the brain trauma reports after the crash. He's the one who provides the pain medication, the saline. The nurses, the guards you see outside, they're not medical staff. They're private security paid for by me. They're here to facilitate my games. Games, I repeated, the word tasting like poison. His eyes lit up, and he turned the chair to face me. It is so boring, Amara. Day in, day out, in this chair, in this room. So we play games. The last nurse, a religious little thing. She tried to pray for me. It was obscene. I told my mother she was stealing my medication. She had her fired, of course, without a reference. His smile widened. The one before that, she was a bit rough, a bit handsy. So I hurt myself. He gestured to a small, faint scar on his cheek. I told my mother that she did it, that she lost her temper. Genevieve didn't just fire her. She had her arrested. Assault? The poor woman is probably still in jail. He leaned forward, his voice a low, excited hiss. It's fun, don't you think, to be so weak and yet so powerful, to hold their entire lives in the palm of my hand. My blood ran cold. I wasn't his wife. I wasn't his partner. I was the next game. My panic was a living thing, clawing its way up my throat, stealing my breath. This wasn't a prison. It was a torture chamber. You're insane, I whispered, pushing myself out of the armchair, backing away toward the massive locked door. You're sick. I'm rich? He corrected me, his voice sharp. The rules are different, and you are mine. My mother bought you for me, my new permanent toy, and you don't get to leave the playroom. He wheeled his chair with a terrifying, silent speed, cutting off my path to the door. I was trapped between him and the wall. Where do you think you're going? He sneered. The show is just starting. Pure animal panic took over. I lunged for the heavy velvet rope, the one that was supposed to summon the nurse. Help! I screamed, yanking the cord. Somebody let me out. He's lying. He's crazy. Let me out. Elias's face transformed. In a split second, the sadistic, intelligent monster vanished. His face crumpled. His eyes went wide with a practiced, abject terror. He looked once again like the broken, pathetic boy from the library. No, please, he wailed, his voice reverting to that weak, trembling, heartbreaking whisper. Don't hurt me. What did I do? Please don't be angry. What are you doing? I stammered, my hand still on the pull cord, my mind reeling from the sudden, jarring switch. This! He snarled, his voice hissing in his real tone for just a second. He grabbed the heavy crystal water glass from his bedside table. Stay back! He shrieked in his victim voice. I'll call my mother. Don't hurt me. And then, with all the power in his upper body, he hurled the glass. It flew past my head, inches from my ear, and shattered against the wall. Then he screamed at the top of his weak, fragile lungs. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated terror. Help me, Mother. Dr. Hollis, help. She's attacking me. She's trying to hurt me. She threw the glass. I stood there frozen, my back against the wall, shards of crystal at my feet. I heard the slam of a key in the lock, and the door burst open. Genevieve Thorne swept into the room, a whirlwind of gray silk and righteous fury. She was flanked by Dr. Hollis and 2 massive security guards who had been masquerading as manservants. She took in the scene in a single cold glance. Me standing wide-eyed against the wall, my chest heaving, the shattered glass glittering on the carpet. And her son, Elias, cowering in his wheelchair, his arms thrown over his head, sobbing in great theatrical, racking gasps. Mother, Mother, she just went crazy, he wailed, pointing a trembling finger at me. She said she hated me. She called me she said I was disgusting. And she threw the glass at my head. She tried to hurt me. I saw it, the narrative clicking into place, the trap. It was perfect. No, I screamed, my voice high and thin with panic. That's a lie. He's lying. He's not weak. He's pretending. He's the one who threw it. Genevieve's icy eyes snapped to me. She walked forward, not in a rush, but with a slow, deliberate stalking menace. I warned you, she hissed, her voice a low, venomous vibration. And then she slapped me. The force of it snapped my head to the side, my cheek exploding in a starburst of pain. The sound echoed in the vast, silent room. You vicious little gold digger, Genevieve spat, her face a mask of pure aristocratic rage. I told you he was fragile. I told you he was sensitive. And this is what you do? You attack a helpless man in a wheelchair. He's not helpless, I cried, tears of rage and desperation stinging my eyes. He threw it. He's been lying to you. Silence, she roared. She turned to Elias, her face instantly melting into one of profound maternal concern. She rushed to his side, stroking his hair. Shh, my baby. It's okay. Mama's here. She won't hurt you again. She's crazy, Mother, Elias sobbed into her dress. She's unstable. I know, baby, I know. Genevieve's eyes, cold as death, met mine over his head. She nodded to the guards. Take her to the guest wing. Lock the door. She will stay there until she calms down, until she learns gratitude. No, I shrieked as the guards grabbed my arms. You don't understand. He's the one. He's lying to you. He's a monster. They dragged me from the room, my heels scraping on the marble. I was screaming the truth, but it was useless. As they pulled me through the doorway, I looked back. Elias was still crying into his mother's chest, but over her shoulder he was watching me, and he was smiling. The trap was sprung, the cage was locked. I was officially the unstable, violent wife. I had zero credibility. I was his. The cage was complete. For 3 weeks, I was a prisoner in the guest wing. It was a beautiful, sterile room with a locked door. A silent nurse brought meals. Genevieve came once to inform me that my hysteria had deeply damaged Elias. I would remain in seclusion, she stated, until I offered a full written apology. I had no choice. I wrote the apology. I begged for forgiveness. I played the part of the unstable girl broken by guilt. I signed the paper, and the fee for my family's survival was paid with a single act of submission. They let me out. I was returned to the master suite. I was returned to him. My life became a living hell. By day, I was the perfect, dutiful, silent wife, pushing his chair, reading to him, my eyes dutifully downcast. By night, when the door was locked, I was his audience. He would mock me. He would test me. He'd accidentally wheel his chair over my foot, then blame me for being in his way. I felt the sharp pain of the tire on my arch, but my face remained an impassive mask. He'd throw food on the floor and make me clean it, hissing that I was nothing but the help. He was a sadist, and I was his new permanent game. But he made a mistake. He thought I was broken. He thought I was stupid. He forgot I'm an artist. An artist, above all else, observes. While he was tormenting me, I was studying him. I was studying the entire toxic ecosystem of that house. I stopped seeing my own fear and started seeing theirs. I saw Dr. Hollis. He wasn't a partner. He was a prisoner. His hands trembled every time Elias was in the room. I saw Elias, with a cruel smile, remind the doctor about his son's scholarship to that expensive private university. Elias wasn't paying Hollis. He was blackmailing him. The truth clicked into place with the precision of a camera shutter. And then I saw Damien, the perfect older brother. He wasn't the charismatic heir. He was a broken, bitter man relegated to a small office in the West Wing. Genevieve hated him. She blamed him for the instability that led to Elias's tragedy. Elias had successfully poisoned his mother against his only rival. I realized the alliance between Elias and his mother wasn't built on love. It was built on his power. I started small. I approached Dr. Hollis in a hallway. "He's going to destroy you too," I whispered. The doctor turned pale and walked away. My heart was racing. That was my one vulnerability ping, risking everything on a desperate throw. But the next day, he forgot a medical file on a hall table. I snatched it up, my fingers brushing the cool marble, and my eyes scanned the page. It contained a single folded note. "Damien, he knows the truth. He can help." The payoff on my risky ask had arrived, small and written on a slip of paper. The target narrowed to the West Wing. I went to Damien. I found him drinking in his office at 3 p.m. He thought I was a spy. His eyes were bloodshot, and he wouldn't meet mine. I told him the truth. Elias isn't broken. He's a monster, and he's blackmailing your mother. Damien's face, which had been slack with self-pity, hardened. "You think I don't know that he did this? The accident? It was for me." He threw his glass, and my mother, she covered it up. "Why?" I whispered. "My father's real will." Damien spat, throwing his glass against the wall. It didn't shatter, but the clatter was loud in the small room. "The second will, the one he wrote after he caught Elias trying to forge documents. It disinherits Elias entirely. If he is ever found criminally culpable for any act, it all comes to me." I finally understood Genevieve. She buried it. She buried it, Damien roared. To protect her broken little boy, she chose her monster over her son. She's been hiding it for a year. I looked at this broken, angry man. We were two prisoners. "I know where the safe is," I said. Elias had gotten arrogant. He trusted me. I was his broken toy. I was so reformed, so dutiful, that he had started to brag. He'd shown me the safe hidden behind a massive dark painting in his study. "All my secrets," he'd sneered. "My leverage over my dear, dear mother." He didn't know I was an artist. He didn't know I had a photographic memory. I had watched his hands. I knew the combination. The final act was set for the Thorne Foundation's annual charity gala, held at the estate. The house would be full of the most powerful people in the state. I played the part of the doting, beautiful, silent wife. I stood by Elias's chair, my hand on his shoulder. The velvet of his jacket was coarse under my fingertips. Halfway through the event, Genevieve stood to give a speech. That was my signal. I slipped away. I went to the library. Damien was waiting. The room, moments before crowded, now felt vast and empty. "He's in the safe," I whispered. "He's so arrogant. He just left it there." While Genevieve was downstairs accepting applause, Damien and I were in her study. He opened the safe, and there it was. The real will. But there was something else. Something I had been looking for. A small digital audio recorder. "What's that?" Damien asked. "Leverage," I said. We returned to the party. Genevieve was glowing. Elias was the tragic, inspiring center of attention. The flashbulbs were bright and intrusive. And then I, the simple wife, stepped up to the podium. May I say a few words?" I asked, my voice trembling, just as they expected. Elias smiled. He nodded indulgently. I wanted to play something, I said. I held up the small recorder and plugged it into the microphone. A recording of my husband. He has been practicing his speech. He's so brave. I pressed play, but it wasn't a speech. It was Elias's voice from 2 nights before. His real voice. Cold, hard, and arrogant, bragging to me. She's such a fool. She really believes I'm her broken baby. I could burn this house to the ground, and she would blame Damien for giving me the matches. She buried the will for me. She'd go to jail for me. I pressed stop. The room was dead silent. Every guest, the mayor, the chief of police, everyone was staring. Genevieve's face was white as ash. Elias. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. You! He shrieked, his weak voice gone. And I said, my voice finally, my own. There's the matter of this. Damien Thorne stepped forward. He was flanked by 2 real police officers and a man I didn't recognize. This is Mr. Fields, Damien said, my father's real lawyer. Mr. Fields held up the will. This is the true and final testament of Arthur Thorne. It disinherits Elias Thorne completely. It's a lie, Genevieve shrieked. Her voice cut through the stunned silence. She's unstable. We also have a full signed confession. A third man said, stepping forward, Dr. Hollis. A confession detailing a year of conspiracy, false imprisonment, and the criminal cover-up of an attempted murder orchestrated by both of them. Elias let out an inhuman roar, lunging in his chair, but the police were already on him. Genevieve simply collapsed. The massive gray matriarch crumbled onto the rich carpet. I stood at the podium watching them. I looked at Damien. My parents' debt, I said. Wiped, he confirmed. And this, he said, handing me a cashier's check for my art. I looked at the check. It was enough to buy a gallery. I walked off the stage. I passed the ruined, weeping form of Genevieve. I passed Elias, his face purple with rage, being restrained by officers. He looked at me as I passed, his eyes full of murder. I just smiled. You were right, Elias, I said, my voice cold. I am your wife, which means under state law, I'm entitled to half of 0. I walked out of that cold stone mansion into the fresh night air. The gravel crunched under my heels, a satisfying sound. I never, ever looked back. The end. The cold night air hit my face, clean and sharp, a complete contrast to the stale, lemon oil-scented air of the Thorne estate. I didn't stop to call a car. I walked, my black dress the only color in the pre-dawn gray, the cashier's check feeling like a declaration of independence in my hand. The next 48 hours were a montage of decisive actions. I used a small portion of the check to pay a lawyer, a good one, who filed the paperwork to dissolve the marriage based on fraud and false imprisonment. The police reports and Dr. Hollis's confession made it simple. My debt, which was already wiped by the original transaction, was officially sealed away from any further Thorne interference. The lawyer assured me the Thorne Empire had bigger problems. I went back to my parents' tiny apartment. The white foreclosure notice was still on the yellow wall. I tore it down and threw it into a trash can, the paper a satisfying rip. My mother Diana watched me, tears in her eyes, not of relief, but of guilt. I didn't know, Amara, she whispered, her hands clasped tight. You knew enough, Mama, I said, handing her a new lease for a smaller, cleaner apartment closer to my father's new physical therapist. It's paid for. Don't worry about it. Just focus on Dad. I kept the details of Elias's true nature simple. He was unstable, and he threw things. I was out, and we were safe. I found a small, sun-drenched studio apartment downtown, far from the Gothic architecture of the Thorne estate. My one battered suitcase held everything I owned. I bought charcoal, canvas, and paint. My hands, which had been raw from scrubbing diner pans, were finally covered in charcoal dust. I was finishing my final year. I started painting again, but the subject was all wrong. My former paintings were vibrant, abstract, full of color. Now I painted cold, dark stone and shadows. My masterpiece, the one that finally felt honest, was a massive canvas of a man in a futuristic throne, his face a terrifying mask of rage and cold amusement. I titled it, The Price. My plan was to disappear, to use the financial clean slate and the cashier's check for my art to finally have the life I was supposed to have. But the thorn shadow was long, even when the lights were out. I received a call from a number I didn't know. I answered on the fourth ring. Amara Hale? A voice, deep and calm, asked, "This is Damien Thorne." I felt a fresh spike of panic. "The game isn't over," my gut screamed. Elias was in custody, but the Thorne name held power. "What do you want, Damien?" I asked, my voice flat, professional. "I owe you a debt," he said. "More than just the money. Elias is fighting the will and the charges, trying to claim a temporary insanity plea based on the fake medical reports Dr. Hollis confessed to." "Let him," I said. "He's a murderer. The truth is out. I'm done with your family." "You can't be," Damien said, his voice dropping, "because he's using your unstable wife narrative now. The incident with the glass? His lawyers are filing a petition to have the entire wedding and the debt-wiping agreement voided, claiming you took advantage of his fragile temperament during an episode, and that the confession from Hollis was coerced by you. The lie he had spun was coming back, not as a nightmare, but as a legal weapon. The stability of my family, the freedom I had paid for, was now being attacked in court. I was officially the unstable, violent wife. "What's your leverage?" I asked, cutting straight to the point. "The real will is secure, but the debt could be reinstated," Damien admitted. "But that's not why I called. The audio recording you played at the gala? It was powerful, but it's hearsay in court without corroborating evidence. His lawyers are claiming it's an edited voice recording, a deep fake. And the confession from Dr. Hollis? Hollis is a minor player. Elias's team is claiming he was blackmailed by you, a desperate, gold-digging artist trying to secure a fortune. They're attacking your reputation to dismiss the evidence." I felt the old cold rage return, stronger than the pity had ever been. Elias was still playing the game, even from a jail cell. He was escalating, moving the conflict from the private sphere of the master suite into the public eye of the court. "I need one thing from you," Damien said, "a single piece of evidence that Elias cannot explain away as a lie orchestrated by a shaking doctor or a vicious wife. Something physical, something only he could have touched, that proves his consciousness and his intent before the accident." "And what is that?" I asked. "The gun," Damien whispered. "The gun he was going to use to stage his own suicide if the murder by car crash plan failed." The line went dead. My hand was shaking as I hung up the phone. A gun. Elias had not only planned to murder his brother, Damien, but he had a backup plan for a staged suicide if the car crash failed. That level of premeditation would shatter his fragile temperament defense. It was the ultimate leverage. But why would Damien know about a hidden gun? The knowledge was a red flag, a fresh red herring in this deep, cold water. Damien, he knows the truth. He can help. Yes, he had helped. But the Thorne family was a nest of vipers. My current goal was simple: secure the gun and break Elias's legal defense, maintaining my freedom and my family's security. The location, according to Damien, was a small, bespoke safe hidden beneath the marble flooring of the library, the one place Elias felt safe to talk to me after the ceremony. I had the address and the digital audio recorder as a prop for the confrontation. Now, I needed the gun. My heart was pounding a painful fast rhythm in my chest. I called my lawyer. I told him I needed to retrieve personal belongings from the estate. The lawyer arranged a supervised retrieval for 2 days later at 10 a.m. I had a micro clock, 2 days to plan. The problem was the safe. I had Elias's arrogant bragging that led to the combination of Genevieve's main safe. But the second safe, the personal one in the library, I knew nothing about. I sat in my studio, staring at the dark canvas of the price. I wasn't just an artist. I was an observer with a photographic memory. I closed my eyes and focused on the library, forcing myself to recall the short, tense hours I'd spent there. The smell of old paper, lemon oil, and a faint antiseptic tang. The rain-streaked window, the massive bookshelves. Then I remembered the moment, just before the ceremony, when Elias was still doing his pathetic broken boy act. He had wheeled himself to the fireplace, claiming the draft was cold. He fiddled with a low-hanging brass plaque on the mantelpiece, then quickly moved away. He did not meet my eye. I saw the tiny, almost invisible action clearly. A single elegant finger, resting on the plaque, pressing it inward for a second. It was a nervous habit, not a lock. I called Damien. The safe in the library. Is it a number pad or key activated? Damien was silent for a moment. It's a biometric lock, but it has a mechanical override, a brass plaque on the fireplace mantel. You press it, and a panel opens for the keypad. Leverage. Damien knew too much. He was either my lifeline or a new, more refined version of my jailer. How do you know about that? I asked, my voice cutting. Elias told me about the design the day he had it installed, Damien admitted, a small, weary exhale on the line. He wanted to rub it in my face. He told me it was the only place in the house where he felt like the true master. He also said he keeps something in it that guarantees his reign. I assumed it was the will, until now. His voice sounded genuine, like a man trapped in the same web of lies. But I was done trusting Thorne men. My body tensed, ready for the confrontation. The retrieval day arrived. I wore my one good black dress, the wedding dress that served as a painful reminder of the price I paid. The lawyer, Mr. Fields, the one who presented the real will, was with me. The estate felt colder now, darker, a monument to a collapsed dynasty. The massive front door opened, and a servant I didn't recognize led us inside. Genevieve was waiting in the foyer, wearing the same cold gray silk, but her face was pinched, her eyes small with fury. "You have no right to be here," she hissed, her voice a low vibration. "I have the court order, Genevieve," Mr. Fields said, holding up a piece of paper. "My client, Amar Hale, is here to retrieve personal effects. You may have a security guard supervise, but you may not interfere." She swept her eyes over me, taking in my simple black dress and my calm face. "Personal effects?" she sneered. "You have no personal effects here, you vicious little gold digger. You arrived with one pathetic suitcase. And the personal effects are in the master suite," I said, meeting her eyes, my voice steady. "The armchair, my clothes, my art supplies. And I believe my husband may have inadvertently misplaced my grandmother's antique locket in the library." The locket was a lie. The name, grandmother's antique locket, was vague enough to pass legal muster, specific enough to grant access, and sentimental enough to sound plausible. Genevieve's eyes narrowed, but she couldn't argue with the court order or the sentimental lie. She signaled one of the massive security guards. "Escort the wife to the library. Do not let her out of your sight. Then return her to the gate." My heart was racing, but I moved slowly, following the guard. The library smelled the same: lemon oil, paper, and antiseptic. The guard stood by the doorway, his arms crossed. I walked to the fireplace. I knelt, pretending to look for the locket under the rug. My fingers found the brass plaque on the mantel. I pressed it inward, just like Elias had. The tiny click was barely audible over the hum of the house. A panel in the marble floor slid open, revealing a small black keypad. The guard didn't move. He had no idea I was opening a safe. He was watching my hands, making sure I didn't pocket a priceless antique. I had the combination to Genevieve's safe, but not this one. I was stuck. The clock was ticking. I looked at the keypad. 10 numbers, no fingerprints. Then I looked at the dark wood desk in the corner. Elias had a number of personal effects left on it: a favorite leather-bound edition of a novel, a thin gold pen, and a large, heavy paperweight. The paperweight was a smooth, dark obsidian. It was a concrete object, an anchor in the scene. And then I remembered an idle comment Elias made during one of his nightly torment sessions. He had been mocking the predictability of his mother's 3-digit combination, scoffing at her use of an obvious birth date. My codes are like me, Amara, simple, brilliant, and based on the day I realized I was truly unstoppable. I looked at the paperweight. The obsidian was smooth, but I saw a faint, almost invisible scratch on its surface, a tiny line I hadn't noticed before. It had the look of a very fine, etched number. I leaned closer, shielding the movement from the guard. The number was etched on the side facing the desk. I risked a quick glance. 05108. May 18th. I remembered the date. May 18th? It was the day of the accident. The day Elias had failed to murder Damien, but instead secured the entire Thorne Empire in his name. The day he became a king on a throne of broken nerves. My hands, though, were wet with sweat, slick on the keys. A biometric lock. The keypad was useless without the correct fingerprint. The guard took one step closer, his eyes sharp, and I knew I had run out of time to figure out the code. My blood froze. The guard's heavy shoes on the marble sounded loud as a gavel. I had the number, 0518, but the biometric scanner was a slick, dark square next to the keypad. I needed Elias's fingerprint, and he was across town in a jail cell. I needed a decisive action, not a reflection. "Excuse me," I said to the guard, my voice light, pulling myself up. I made a show of rubbing my fingers on my black dress. "My hands are clammy. I need a tissue for my allergies." The guard nodded, annoyed, and reached for the box on the corner of the desk, right next to the obsidian paperweight. My eyes were locked on the desk. The obsidian paperweight. I remembered Elias's long, elegant hands. He would have handled that paperweight hundreds of times. As the guard turned back, I lunged, not for the safe, but for the desk. I grabbed the smooth, heavy paperweight. "Wait," the guard said, moving toward me. "It's a locket," I cried, holding the black stone up to the dim light. "I think I found it. I thought it was just a rock, but look how it's polished. Oh, it must be the case for my grandmother's antique locket." I feigned an emotional, tearful moment. The guard stopped. He didn't want to touch the antique. He just watched. My heart was hammering, but my fingers were working. I breathed on the smooth stone, then quickly pressed the section I had just breathed on, where Elias's print would be, to the biometric reader. Then I quickly keyed in the code, 0518. A soft hiss came from the floor. The safe door swung open, revealing a small, velvet-lined interior. The guard took a step back, realizing the rock was not a locket, and his job was to report the truth. "Ma'am, I need to see what's inside that safe," he commanded, his hand reaching for the radio on his shoulder. I didn't argue. I didn't look at him. I looked into the safe. Lying on the velvet was a small military-grade black pistol, a lethal cold thing. It had a long, thin silencer attached, and next to it, a small laminated card. I grabbed the gun and the card. The evidence must appear on page in the form of physical, visible artifacts. The cool metal in my hand was the physical proof of his intent. "I'm sorry, officer," I said, turning to face him, the gun hidden beneath the sleeve of my black dress. "But this isn't a locket. It's my artwork. My husband was a collector, you see. He bought this piece before the accident." He called it the guarantor. I held up the small laminated card. It was a receipt. The receipt for the firearm, purchased in Elias Thorne's name, 2 days before the car crash. It was never meant for suicide, was it? It was proof of intent, a final cruel contingency if the accident failed. I was reciting the truth, but the guard was just a servant. His orders were simple. "Do not let her out of your sight." I took a breath. The gun. It proves he intended to commit a violent crime, which invalidates the will and his entire defense. I then did the only thing I could. I closed the safe door and handed the heavy obsidian paperweight to the guard. "Please return this to the desk, officer. It's very valuable." I needed to create a confrontation to escape the confines of the room. "You will come with me now," the guard said, the radio half raised to his mouth. "I won't," I said, looking past him. "I have what I came for. Now I have a life to get back to." I didn't run. I moved. I walked out of the library, the guard scrambling to follow and radio at the same time. The gun wrapped in my black dress sleeve was a heavy, cold weight against my forearm. Genevieve was waiting for us in the foyer, her gray silk a stark contrast to the black and white marble. "You took an hour, Amara," she snapped. "What personal effects required that much time?" "The locket was complicated," I said, my voice sweet, using the lie I had created. The guard caught up. "Mrs. Thorne. She opened the safe in the library. She took something. I couldn't see what." Genevieve's face went from pinched fury to pure, panicked white. She knew the significance of a hidden safe in the library. She knew what Elias kept there. "Stop her!" Genevieve shrieked to the other security guard. My heart was in my throat, but I was out the door. My lawyer, Mr. Fields, was waiting by the black car. "Drive," I said, getting into the back seat, the gun still concealed. I didn't look back. Genevieve Thorne stood screaming on the steps, realizing that the one thing she thought was a secret was now in the hands of the woman she had bought and sold. Back in my sun-drenched, tiny studio, the black gun and the laminated receipt sat on my easel. They were ugly, honest artifacts in a room meant for beauty and light. They were the guarantor. Elias had guaranteed his position as a king with a murder plan. I would use the evidence of that plan to guarantee my freedom. The stakes had escalated from financial security, private, to legal defense, financial or more legal, and now threatened public reputation, social public. Elias's team was actively tanking my reputation to dismiss Dr. Hollis's confession and reinstate my debt. My next move had to be public, decisive, and final. I called Damien. "I have it," I said. "The gun. And the receipt, signed by Elias 2 days before the accident." "The receipt?" Damien repeated, his voice filled with a kind of awe and a sick, sudden relief. "That's it. That's the evidence of premeditation that destroys his insanity defense." "I don't trust you, Damien," I said, my voice steady. "You knew about the hidden safe and the mechanical override. Why didn't you retrieve it yourself?" His reply was a vulnerable ping. "Because I was broken, Amara. I was drinking at 3 p.m. I had lost the company, my father's respect, and my mother's love. I was a passenger in my own life. I couldn't risk going to the estate, She would have shredded me. I needed an outsider, and you were the only one left with the courage to fight back. The admission cost him his dignity, but it paid off the trust I had risked when I told him about the safe. I saw him as another prisoner in the Thorne house, just in a different wing. We don't go to the police, I decided. They are owned by Genevieve. We use the media. We destroy his credibility by revealing the truth of the guarantor at the highest possible level. Damien agreed. His contact was a sharp-tongued investigative reporter for the city's largest paper. The next day, I was sitting in a lawyer's office, not Mr. Fields, but a media specialist Damien had arranged. I placed the gun, wrapped in a linen cloth, and the laminated receipt on the table. I looked at the reporter, a woman named Ms. Alvarez, and told her everything. I told her about the debt, the black car, the wedding, the lie of Elias's paralysis, the attempt on Damien's life, Genevieve's cover-up, the game, and the guarantor. I even told her about the simple black dress and the one pathetic suitcase. Ms. Alvarez was a professional. She took pictures of the gun and the receipt, carefully logging the serial number and the purchase date. She had the contact information for Dr. Hollis and the address for the Thorne estate. The article hit the morning after. The headline was a cannon shot. Thorne heir's paralysis was a lie. Accused of attempted murder. Mother covered up evidence. Wife reveals backup plan. The consequences were immediate and public. Social fallout. Genevieve Thorne was forced to release a statement that was a desperate, angry non-denial, claiming the story was a vicious, calculated smear by a disgruntled former in-law. Legal consequence? The judge in the divorce and attempted murder cases immediately ordered a new hearing for the following morning, citing new, compelling evidence of premeditated criminal intent. The clock was ticking until 9 a.m. Elias was pulled from the minimum security hospital wing and placed in an actual jail cell. The final confrontation was set, a public hearing. I was walking back to my studio, feeling the first surge of pure, unadulterated victory when my phone buzzed. It was Damien. "I warned you about the power of the Thorne name," he said, his voice clipped and cold. "Genevieve just filed an emergency motion. She is petitioning the court to have you declared mentally unstable and a flight risk, asking for a temporary restraining order and an order to seize the assets she claims you stole." "The cashier's check for my art?" I asked. "Yes, and the check is for $500,000. She's claiming you blackmailed her for that amount, using the gun as leverage. She's twisting the truth into a gold digger lie." I closed my eyes. Elias had given me half of zero. Now Genevieve was coming for what was truly mine, the price of my art. My lawyer called an hour later. "Amara, Genevieve is using the old police report, the one from the night of the wedding, the one where Elias screamed you threw the glass at him and the guards dragged you away. She's claiming you are dangerous and emotionally compromised. If you go to court tomorrow, they could try to have you arrested, or at least discredit you so badly that the gun and the receipt are dismissed as fabricated." The trap wasn't just physical anymore. It was legal, and it was about to destroy my reputation and my freedom. Elias's game was still active. I looked at the gun on the easel. It was the proof, but to present it, I would have to walk into Genevieve's final legal cage. I knew I had to go, but I had to walk into that courthouse with one final, undeniable piece of leverage that would destroy Genevieve's ability to lie forever. The morning of the hearing, the courthouse steps were swarming with reporters and cameras. I was walking into the public domain, a place of bright, harsh light and unforgiving judgment. My lawyer had advised me to stay home, to let him handle the legal maneuvering against Genevieve's emergency motion. I refused. "I walk in with you," I said. "I'm the artist." I have to see the final brushstroke. My current goal was to present the gun and receipt at the hearing, to finalize Elias's legal defeat and secure my assets, without being discredited by Genevieve's unstable wife narrative. As we walked up the steps, the noise was deafening. I felt a cold calm settle over me, the same focus I got when a painting was nearly finished. Genevieve Thorne was already inside, seated at the petitioner's table. She looked like a gray silk sculpture of righteous fury. Elias's legal team, slick and expensive, were whispering to her. Elias was not present, awaiting the ruling from his jail cell. The judge, a no-nonsense woman, gavelled the court to order. Genevieve's lawyer opened with a brutal, concise attack. Your Honor, we are here today to protect a vulnerable man, Elias Thorne, from the calculated, violent exploitation of this woman, Amara Hale. We submit police reports and sworn testimony from a private security officer confirming Ms. Hale's violent outburst, where she threw a glass at Mr. Thorne's head, and her subsequent, desperate blackmail of Elias's mother for $500,000 worth of assets. The lie hit me like the slap Genevieve had delivered. It was a perfect perversion of the truth. My blood was cold, but my mind was working. I had to flip the script. The confrontation had to target Genevieve directly. Your Honor, my lawyer began, standing up, we have overwhelming evidence that— Objection, Your Honor, Genevieve's lawyer shouted. Counsel is about to present evidence fabricated by a desperate woman whose own mental stability is now in question. The judge looked at me. I stood up before my lawyer could stop me. Your Honor, I ask to address the court directly, for only 1 minute. The judge hesitated, then nodded. 1 minute, Ms. Hale. And be concise. I walked to the court railing, the gun and the receipt still concealed, but I needed to destroy the root of the lie, Genevieve's maternal devotion. Your Honor, Genevieve Thorne's entire defense is that she is a devoted mother protecting her vulnerable son, I said, my voice strong, cutting through the courtroom tension. She is a liar. She did not cover up the evidence because she loves Elias. She covered it up because she feared what would happen if the truth came out. Genevieve's face twisted into a mask of pure rage. She's delusional. She's— Silence, Genevieve, the judge commanded. Your Honor, I continued, Elias told me the truth on an audio recording presented at the gala. He planned to murder his brother, and he had a backup plan, a final, cruel contingency. I reached into my sleeve and pulled out the weapon. I didn't raise it. I simply placed the black metallic weight of the guarantor on the railing, then slid the laminated receipt next to it. The courtroom gasped. The flashbulbs went off in the back. This is a receipt for a firearm, purchased by Elias Thorne 2 days before the car crash, in his name, as his insurance policy. He called it the guarantor. I didn't stop. I looked directly at Genevieve. You knew about this gun, Genevieve. You knew about your son's true plans. The police didn't find it because you helped him hide it. You protected a monster who was trying to kill your firstborn son, Damien, because if Elias was convicted, your late husband's true will, the second will, written when Arthur Thorne discovered Elias was a forger, would have disinherited Elias entirely. I looked back at the judge. The reason Genevieve Thorne is fighting me is not because I am unstable. It's because she is terrified that the truth of her own criminal conspiracy to conceal evidence and defraud her first son will come out. She didn't protect her baby. She protected the legacy she believed was rightfully his. And she's about to lose everything. Genevieve, who had been listening with a sickening, frozen smile, suddenly looked not at me, but at the gun and the receipt. She realized the receipt was the undeniable proof of her own guilt. She had protected a murderer to retain her status, and I had just presented the evidence of her conspiracy in open court. Your Honor, Mr. Field said, seizing the moment, we move to have the full confession of Dr. Hollis entered into evidence, along with this receipt and the audio recording, and we ask for an immediate dismissal of this malicious and defamatory motion against my client. The judge looked down at Genevieve, whose face was pale, devoid of all aristocratic rage, now replaced by a chilling realization. Motion granted, the judge said, her voice ice cold. Ms. Hale, you are dismissed. Your family's debt remains null and void. The matter of the assets will be settled in a separate hearing. The court will also be forwarding all evidence to the appropriate authorities for investigation and to a conspiracy to obstruct justice. I looked at Genevieve. Her eyes, the color of a winter sky, were wide, not with fury, but with defeat. Elias was gone. The Thorne Empire was broken. And I, the simple artist, had secured the final victory. I walked out of the courtroom, passing the bank of flashing cameras and shouting reporters. My lawyer was speaking to the press. I had the money, my freedom, and my art. I had walked out of the tomb into the fresh night air. The price I paid was not the $50 bill my father gave me for emergencies. The price was my pity, and I was done paying. I found a quiet corner in the hall, pulled out my charcoal, and started sketching Ms. Alvarez, the reporter. I was an artist, and I had finally found my true subject, the sharp, brutal truth, rendered in high contrast, with no room for sentiment. I never used the money from my art to buy a gallery. I used it to buy the studio next to mine, so I could paint as loud as I wanted, and I never, ever painted in black and white again. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you are here.